Moore's law is not dead. For as long as I can remember, the argument has been that Moore's law, i.e. doubling in CPU processing power every couple of years or so, was always just about to end due to the inability to shrink the CPU dies further, and thus an end to exponential increase in processing power that is usually measured in CPU transistor count. I did not agree with this 5 years ago when I first started writing about the exponential AI megatrend, where today it has not turned out to be true on either the transistor count or the compute power basis, which is what people should actually be focused upon. After all, that is what one actually utilises, compute power. It just illustrates how worthless most of that which is written in the mainstream press tends to be. So no, Moore's law was not dead 5 years ago, and nor is it about to die anytime soon. That's before I've even taken account of the processing power that quantum computers promise to deliver in the distant future. For instance, today I can buy a high-end desktop processor with 40 billion transistors on it, with the processing power roughly equivalent to a mid-1990s supercomputer, all in one CPU package, as innovation continues to extend compute power into multi-core processors, where once upon a time dual-core processors were the innovation that answered the roadblock of increasing clock speeds when they reached the gigahertz frequencies, where top-end processors for the past decade have found it difficult to sustain 5 GHz on CPU cores due to overheating issues. But innovation is addressing this by limiting boosting to clock speeds on single cores, and thus improve processing power by having more cores, and better die design and heat dissipation. And of course, smaller scale logic gates architecture, as 22 nanometer gave way to 14 nanometer, that is giving way to 7 nanometer for AMD processors at least. Well, Intel's finding it difficult to move from 4 nanometer to 10 nanometer. And likely next year we will see 5 nanometer desktop processors. So we are not done with silicon just yet, as we will have 4 nanometer, then 3 nanometer, and eventually 1 nanometer logic gate architecture to look forward to, which means cramming many times more transistors onto CPU dies for many years. So say 4 years from now we can look forward to retail CPU packages with over 100 billion transistors, probably on at least a 3 nanometer scale. So please, I don't want to hear any more about Moore's law ending or has ended, because it has not to date, and as far as I can see it won't for the remainder of this decade at least. And then we have the scope to go beyond silicon, i.e. graphene. And all of this is before we throw GPUs into the mix, parallel processing on a huge scale that forms the very basis of the compute power of today's supercomputers. Whilst Nvidia was first off the block, what got started off as gaming GPUs that became the mainstay of crypto miners, today all of the CPU manufacturing giants recognize the significance and importance of GPUs, and are thus busy designing their own GPUs to rival that of Nvidia's, with a good chance that AMD is just about to pip Nvidia to the post later this year, probably within the next few weeks, with its big Navi architecture, which is why one should be invested in AMD and Nvidia. Compute power is driving the AI megatrend, as it allows for the time-consuming nature of machine learning to take place, one of neural nets continuously adjusting weights to inputs to output ever more accurate models and predictions of the real world, so that common applications such as self-driving cars increasingly become manifest on our roads over the coming years. This AI trend is exponential, and on its own would be enough to keep me invested in AI stocks, but it merely marks the beginning of what is to come.